Welcome to the Owning Your Menopause podcast. I'm really excited. Today's guest is a highly sought after author, podcaster, and speaker. Her first two books made it to the Sunday Times bestseller list: Mind Over Mother, Every Mother's Guide to Worry and Anxiety in the First Years, and You Know Your Worth. The little book of new mums feelings draws on her experiences as a mum to 3 children and covers everything from baby blues to anxiety to guilt, insomnia, stress, your inner critic, and maintaining friendships. Her fourth book, Raising a Happier Mother, is all about how to find balance, feel good, and see your children flourish as a result. We won't come on to her fifth book because we're going to talk about that, which she actually wrote pretty much in about 2 weeks, but we will get to that. But she has become an amazing friend. I absolutely value her voice in this space. And her new book, The Uncomfortable Truth, does really actually raise many of the uncomfortable thoughts that I have had. And it is such an inspiring book. I cannot wait to talk about it. Anna, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. I need to stop writing books because there's too many to mention now.
Well, no, don't stop writing books because we love them.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Got my third cup of coffee, which I probably shouldn't be drinking every day. And I'm just going to have the 2. I don't need more. Like you, I'm full of coffee beans.
Full of coffee beans.
I do not need more.
But it doesn't affect us.
Full of beans, coffee beans.
It doesn't affect us. We can drink as much coffee and we're fine.
It kind of just, I feel like it does kind of chill me out in a way.
Yeah.
It's a stimulant, isn't it?
It does, for special people like us. So Anna, I'm going to take you back a little bit, which I quite like to do with all my guests, because I think what's really intriguing about this kind of demographic of, let's go with women plus 35, because I know you're just a little bit younger than me, is that we are now, a lot of our business, a lot of what we do, social media has kind of allowed us to elevate what it is we have to say and our message. So I guess, what was your life? What was Anna before Instagram? And how did that all come about?
Oh, I feel quite wistful about Anna pre-Instagram because I absolutely love my job. I never dreamed it could even be a job. It wasn't a job. That's probably why. Before I discovered Instagram. But life and my headspace probably felt so much different. And I'm really trying to get a bit more of that back in my life right now. Boundaries, but really hard to hold them sometimes. But pre-Instagram, I was working in London. I had a very kind of normal looking clinical practice where I'd worked from rented therapy rooms. I worked in GP surgeries, lived with my husband in a flat in kind of Tooting. And then we moved to Surrey when I was pregnant with my oldest, who's now very, very nearly 10, and moved into a sweet little terraced cottage, and then had my other child quite quickly after, because my first one he made me feel quite smug about motherhood, and I thought, I'm quite good at this, so I cracked on. And then was very, very humbled by my second experience, where he had undiagnosed silent reflux, and he's my autistic son, so there's right from the off there were lots of kind of different challenges that we faced, and I thought it was all my fault. I thought every sleepless night, it was down to me, and I hadn't got the routine right. Every feed that just didn't go smoothly, which is the majority of them, was because I hadn't got the right position, or I hadn't got the right nipple shears, or whatever it was always my fault. And at that point, I downloaded Instagram. I felt very low. I felt my identity as a therapist and being a helper, which was so woven with how I was in the world. That was what I felt my point was, to be helpful to others. It was really challenged because actually I really, really needed help, and I needed to lean on other people, and it felt so uncomfortable and alien to me that I really resisted it. And yeah, it was just a really, really messy, painful time that ended up being very, very pivotal. It was one of those turning points that at that point you feel like is actually the end of the world, but really your world is just about to start beginning in a whole different way. And all of that people pleasing, and that I've got this, like, I'm, I don't need anyone else. It was just completely stripped away. And I downloaded Instagram in those sleep deprived nights, because we were moving house and I wanted to know how to decorate it because it was a brand new build with white walls and I had no mental energy to know what colours to put on the walls. So that's how I downloaded Instagram. And in the night times, I'd scroll through interior design accounts and start sharing some of the decisions that I was making around fabric samples. And it just felt like a really fun escapism. And then I had finished painting my house and we'd moved in. And this is where Instagram stories begun, and Instagram lives. And I remember doing a live to show people my house, and someone said, "What do you actually do as a job, Anna? Because obviously you don't just prance around picking paint colours." And I said, "I'm a therapist." And that's kind of, honestly, that was like the little moment where my therapeutic insight and understanding started kind of breaking into my account a little bit.
Well, we're grateful for that because I love what you share. And we all come on to that. When you were a therapist pre-Instagram, were you, and I guess like maybe even pre-kids, were you talking about, what were you specialising in? Were you talking about the same thing? Because I always think that's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because we don't have an understanding or appreciation of what it's like, obviously, because we haven't been there, being a parent, or as you said, the pressures of motherhood, until we're very much kind of catapulted into it. And I think it's as you say, you've got an array of different children with, not an array of different children, but different children with different personalities, as have I. And that comes with its complexities. And what were you, so what kind of therapy were you doing before? Because clearly your own life circumstance and experience has led you more towards talking about the people pleasing side, the pressures of motherhood, what were you doing before?
So what was I doing before? I was working a lot with burnout and stress and anxiety, depression, addiction, the kind of the general practice stuff, and loving it. And also on the side of that, I was running a women's ministry at a church. So there I was doing lots of groups and I was writing kind of journal reflection notes and I was doing talks on things around identity and self-esteem. So there was that going on. I've always been really passionate about just working and sharing with women. But at that point, it wasn't really a thing that as a therapist you brought your own experience into the mix. Like it was very much you have your therapy as a therapist and you keep yourself and your own story out of the room. So on Instagram, when I started kind of just sharing my own experience of motherhood, that was very uncharted territory for me. And I thought maybe someone's going to come after me, someone from the accrediting body of which I'm signed up with. I'm going to get told off. I don't know if this is okay. But I thought at least I'm just using my own experience, because I'm not going to talk about my clients. I'm not going to talk about case studies as such. I'm just going to be honest about my own experience, because what I started doing was, I was faced with all of these very conflicting emotions, intrusive thoughts, just the perfectionism that just absolutely did not translate to motherhood. And as I grappled with all of that in myself, I was just applying my psychotherapeutic knowledge and understanding to it and finding it so deeply helpful that I thought, if I'm finding this helpful, other people will probably find it helpful. And I had the absolute privilege of knowing the behind the scenes of so many people's different stories over the years that I knew that I wasn't alone. So I didn't have to have quite the same level of shame and taboo around talking about these things, because I knew I wasn't alone. I knew statistically it would resonate with people. And I had that therapeutic knowledge and understanding to know why and then what to do with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because actually you're talking about kind of that and then coming out on Instagram, and actually like key things picking up on there, which is saying before that Instagram world you talked about like losing your identity and burnout. But actually that again, I think there's a lot of things that women as they come into motherhood face, because as your lovely friend Zoe Blaskey has said, I think nowadays never more has the modern day woman faced as many challenges. We've kind of lost that village, and we've lost the people around us that we used to have. And the pressure is on for women. Childcare is expensive, and we want to work, and we want to do it all, and we want to juggle. And then again, I think that thing of social media, what that has opened up is the world of comparing your life. So actually kind of, I guess, drawing on that sort of pre-Instagram life of that anxiety and burnout, and what you then now see on Instagram. I think that social media side causes so many women to go into burnout and to have anxiety and to have these feelings of guilt and to feel like they're a bad parent, and never more so after the summer holidays, when there's this array of like perfectness from a lot of people, which I think you and I both certainly know, because we have been in this space now long enough, that people will always put the positive stuff, the stuff that they want you to see. And I guess that's where, you kind of cornered that market, because you were so sincere, you were so relatable, and you kind of took off the plaster of that perfection, which, as you say, allows people to be seen and people to feel supported. You've talked about, obviously, your son being autistic. Do you feel quite vulnerable? I mean, you do share a lot, and I know you've had various different traumas in your life. We're both the same. We share a lot. It feels very vulnerable sharing so much. But I think at the same time, it is quite cathartic, because again, that people reach out and you don't feel alone. I mean, what's your kind of take on that sort of vulnerability side? Is there something how do you juggle that? And especially, I guess, as your kids get older, I now am really aware of what I put out there, because my kids follow me. They don't want anything to do with Instagram. That's hard, that bit.
Oh. Yeah, I think I feel very, very fortunate that I made the decision very early on not to show my children on Instagram. And I'm so grateful that I made that decision, this was probably now going back like 8 years, really. We didn't have the same knowledge and understanding and maybe fear that we have now around what we share on social media and where the boundaries are. So that's one decision I made that I'm really grateful for. Now, I've shared some of my most shameful moments in parenting. I've shared some of my most graphic, intrusive thoughts, and it can feel like a very vulnerable thing, and it can feel like a risky thing to do, because I think the more vulnerable you are, the more open you are, the more open you are to being misunderstood, the more open you are to wording something wrong that someone might take offence at. And for me, I think because I don't feel the same taboo around these topics, because of that privilege that I spoke about having that layer of knowledge and understanding and clarity as to the why and the what now. Yes, I might open myself to someone saying, how can you say that? How can you feel that? But I know that I'm not alone. Like, really, I really know that I'm not alone. And I really know that these thoughts are not isolated thoughts, and I really know that I'm sharing something that is very much shared human experience amongst many people, and that's really quite liberating. And I think I share the names of my kids less now. Naturally, I don't really name them in the way that I used to when they were younger, and I think so much of it is uncharted. There will undoubtedly be regrets that I have, as maybe they pick up my books or they scroll through my page in a few years. There might be things that I think, oh gosh, I wish I hadn't said that or shared that. But we only do the best we can with the knowledge and the insight and the resources that we have at the time. And it's very much uncharted territory.
Yeah,
for us.
I think that's really hard, isn't it? Again, it's that sort of moment where we are so critical of ourselves as parents, and actually, obviously, title of this, Owning Your Menopause, I think that weirdly there's sort of it's that cyclical thing where you have your kids and you become a mother if you choose to, or you can, and then, like you say, you lose your identity. And I think often, just as we're getting that identity back and we feel like, yeah, you know what, this is good, the hormones change again, and that self-doubt really, really creeps in. And I think that is the wonderful thing about sharing stuff, is for people to not feel alone. And I think that, you know, you're then dealing with a different set of issues as your kids navigate, you know, their own hormonal fluctuations, and then their own friendships and their own thing. And I think one of the hardest things, and we will come on to it, is you see perhaps the same patterns that not mistakes, because that's unfair, the same things that your parents did with you that you want to try and avoid, you know. And I think that can become quite an uncomfortable moment in your relationship with your older children, and again, as a woman then navigating that sort of life stage, you lose your identity again as you're trying to kind of grapple things back. And I think that's what I mean. Well, as I say, we'll come on to the uncomfortable truth, because I know that we get into the bones of a lot of things that I think women in this life stage do struggle with. But well, let's go to the bit where you've written 5 books. Okay, how do you juggle your time? Give us that little nugget.
Oh, yeah. It's looked very, very different along the way with each of the books, and I think this is so important, is trying to work with where you're at right now in life, and not trying to use yesterday's tools for today's challenges, because sometimes it just doesn't fit. Like my first book, I wrote between breastfeeds, and we had a nanny at that point that would take my daughter out for a little walk, and I'd do a chunk of work, and then we'd go to a playgroup together, and then I'd come home and feed and do a chunk. So that's how that one looked. And then I think the next one was written in a pandemic, and it was very much therapeutic for me to have somewhere to go that was just upstairs into my laptop, shutting the world out. And it gave me a sense of, well, I'm doing something good in all of this absolute chaos and uncertainty. So that I think that one was Know Your Worth. And so each book has looked very, very different. This most recent one was very much just an urge to write a lot very fast. So I did write it in 2 weeks. And that's because I really felt like I had to. It was, quite remarkable, really. I wouldn't recommend it. I've had authors say, how do you write the book in 2 weeks? Tell me, I want to do it. And I'm like, I wouldn't recommend it. It was very much just something that I really had to do. So the idea for The Uncomfortable Truth came to me when kind of back in the winter of last year's winter, the beginning of last year, and I was with my mum, and I was about to go and do a TED talk, and I was stood by the bed in the hotel, and I suddenly had this idea for a book about life's uncertainties, and about how we just need to find ways to become a bit more accepting of the lack of control we have in life. Instead of exhausting ourselves trying to make sense of it all and trying to micromanage everything, because it's just burning us out, and we're not able to be present because we're just living so scared of what might go wrong in the next minute. And so I wrote the whole book, chapter title, colour of the book, name of the book, down in about 30 seconds. And it was just this kind of like download. Like I'm very spiritual. I have a strong faith. I think it was like a higher power. Like God was like, you must write this book about this thing. So I told my literary agent, and he was like, can you just put that on ice, please, so that we can get the other one out and into the world. And I was like, okay, but I couldn't put it on ice. And I kept thinking about it. So I told him I was going to write it over 3 months and get up really early in my ADHD way. I was going to wake up like 5 o'clock 3 times a week, write a couple of thousand words before the kids got up. And then, by the end of the summer, ta-da, it was going to be a book that I'd written like without it disturbing life or promoting my other book. And I just told him I was going to do it. And if he didn't get a book deal, it didn't matter. I just had to write the book. I'd sell it as an ebook, whatever. But I went for a walk before my kids broke up from school, a couple of weeks before they broke up. And I went for a walk, and I just had this real strong sense that I had to write this book in 2 weeks. And again, higher power thing, like write this book in 2 weeks. And I didn't want to go through burnout again. I was very nervous about trying to write 60,000 words in 2 weeks. I went home, told my husband, he said, don't do it. I said to my mum, she said, that doesn't sound wise. But I knew I had to honour this. So I wrote it whilst the kids were at school. I wrote it early in the morning. I just poured it all out like in some kind of frenzy. And it was You know, it was at a time in life that was actually really challenging. There was a lot going on around that book that was just hard and painful and stressful. So it was, again, really cathartic escape into something that that was creative and I was enjoying. And I finished it on the Sunday. And then on the Wednesday, one of those just life-shattering curveballs came into our world and turned it absolutely upside down, back to front. We didn't know if normal would ever feel. There was grief, there was pain, and I was promoting a book called Raising a Happier Mother at a point when I just felt utterly more broken than I had ever felt in my life before. And I just felt so relieved that I'd written this book, not only because I then didn't have to write another book for a while because it had already been done, but because these uncomfortable truths, you know, bad things will happen. You'll lose people you love. You know, life isn't fair. All of these things were so fresh in my mind that they actually provided me with like a map. And I was just overwhelmingly grateful that I had honoured that call to write it in 2 weeks, because I had no idea what was about to happen.
So I was going to say, with your uncomfortable truths, with the 10 of them, you obviously you're drawing on your own experiences, and obviously without mentioning, you know, clients, I guess things that people have come to you with, because I think for me the most outstanding things of all of those 10 they are without doubt all thoughts that I do have, you know, and you have them more than once. It's not just like it's a passing thought and then it goes, you know. Mm-hmm. So there are a million times in the day when I suppose like with Rupert, you know, he's not well. I'm like, life isn't fair. How come I got that? Yeah. You know, so we can be very selfish with those thoughts. Obviously, I would lose people I love. I lost my dad. I lost my stepdad. You know, but they are really uncomfortable. I'm slightly skipping here, but that's fine. Out of all of those 10, I guess not what is your favourite uncomfortable truth, but which is maybe let's do 2. What's your favourite uncomfortable truth, but also which is the one that's probably helped you heal the most?
Yeah. My favourite uncomfortable truth is that some people won't like you, because actually it is immensely liberating when you start letting go. And I think when you kind of like hitting perimenopause and you're hitting menopause and you're just, it gets you really reflecting. You know, I'm 39, so it's coming at me. Okay, I'm so grateful for all of your work, because I feel so much more informed than many people, the generation before, and people just a bit older than us. You know, I'm so grateful. But even hitting 39 and knowing the 40s next year, it's making me think I'm at the I'm probably at the midpoint in my life if I'm lucky. It starts, these milestones, this shift starts getting us thinking about life and what we've poured our energy into, and what we want for the rest of our lives, and how we might want it to look and feel slightly different. And I think shedding that layer of people pleasing, that fear of what other people think, that they're exhausting yourself to try and please people that are committed to misunderstanding you, like, it is such a gift. Like, it's been liberating. I've lived more authentically. I've had better connections and relationships. My life reflects me more, whereas before it would just reflect the needs of other people, and that's kind of what I lived to meet, and that's what I thought my purpose was. So, oh man, life is just so much more full and richer, and my life is more reflective of me and my identity and my character. And yeah, so that is my favourite. And if people that's why it's right up there at the front. Cause,
I know, I was going to say, I have to interject there, because it made me laugh.
Go on.
Because my mum is very vivacious. She's brilliant. Like, I love her. But I guess not just my mum. I'm bringing my mother-in-law into this. Like, let's look at that sort of age gap, right? And that first one, I mean, literally does totally hit the nail on the head, which is what I think happens at midlife, is you give less fucks, okay? I'm swearing on my own podcast, yes. And my mum my mum has actually said, you know, she's brilliant, because she'll go in, and if she doesn't like someone, oh, we know about it, they know about it, like from the get-go. There's just no, and you'll leave and you go, God, I didn't like that person. And it's like, no, you're right. And they know it. We all knew it. We could all feel it. She goes, I just don't have time. I don't have time for that. And I think that actually we've all done that. We just don't want to admit that either some people won't like me, I won't like other people, because we are that generation of sort of just plain demure, be kind, be this, be soft. But actually, to that extent, you often fill your life with people that don't necessarily make you feel good about yourself, or don't necessarily make you feel happy. And I think you're right. I think when we hit this midpoint and this part of our life, it's like surround yourself with people that you want to spend time with. And you might find that those people might not like you, but that is okay as well. Like, do you know what I mean? I think you become more
not
confident.
All the time, at least.
Not all the time. I was once described as Marmite, and someone's like, "Wow, aren't you upset by that?" And I was like, "Well, not really, no, because people are either going to like me or hate me, and I can't do anything about that, and I can't change for people." And like you say, I think that is a really liberating moment. And I think it does happen to all of us, but we're just sometimes a little bit scared to kind of go and sit with it.
Yeah, but I love what you said there, is that I can't change for people. And actually, many, many, many people do change for people. They make themselves change for people, and they contort their personalities and their characters and their wants and their needs and their feelings into what they feel fits. But that's normally out of fear of being abandoned somehow, when actually what you end up doing is chronically abandoning yourself, so you don't even know what your thoughts, feelings, need, personality, character actually look like anymore. So yeah, I'm glad that you've taken that stance and you're like, this is who I am, and I wish that I'd taken that earlier, and I'm so glad that I'm taking that now. And we can be kind and respectful and also honor who we are and be authentic to who we are, and we'll attract the people that like who we are. Yeah. Rather than feel like an imposter in your own life when you're surrounded by people who like a version of you that isn't actually resembling who you are. So this is basically a con.
Yeah. No.
It's tiring.
So we've done, that's your favourite uncomfortable truth.
Yeah.
What's the one that's been the most life-changing for you?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's like all of them really. But people will misunderstand me, which I think ties into a little bit with some people won't like me, because actually you can be misunderstood by the people closest to you in your life who really like you and love you, and that can be really, really hard. And I think having a social media platform, you get misunderstood left, right and centre. And I remember this moment when I read a message, and it was a comment on my Instagram post, and it said, "Oh, Anna, I used to think Anna was an overprivileged toff who can't handle motherhood, and now I like her," or something. It was
Wow.
It was like this really weird veiled compliment. But honestly, everything in me, I went into this shame spiral of like, I had a very physical reaction, and I was desperate to explain myself to her. I wanted to explain my upbringing. I wanted to explain how I was not an overprivileged toff. Like, this was my upbringing, and it blah blah, I wanted to explain how my not handling motherhood might have actually looked like I was letting myself be visibly imperfect, which actually meant I was handling it far better than I was when I was trying to just get everything right all the time. And it was this urge to win her around so that she could understand me and understand where I was coming from. And I just really checked myself, because it was so remarkably physical, this need to be understood, and this shame and this panic that came with feeling so wrongly misunderstood, that I was like, I can't explain my life story to everyone. And even if I did, there would be people for whom it was still too whatever, this or that, or too privileged, or too under, like, goodness knows what. And it was this real like anchor point where I was like, yeah, I can't explain myself to anyone. There will be people who need to misunderstand me or to see me in a certain way so that they can protect something of themselves or validate something of themselves. And that's not my responsibility. And I just thought, yeah, I'm going to be misunderstood left, right and centre. But the most important thing is that I can validate myself. And it was again, one of those massively liberating things that has enabled me to live more authentically. And it's painful when people who love you and who you love don't get you.
Yeah.
But not everyone's going to. And I think it's about, my relationships have changed in taking that pressure off the people closest to me, getting every part of me, and knowing that sometimes they're not going to because they can't, or they can't see it in themselves, for whatever reason. And that I can have a network of people in my life who get what it is like to be a mother of an autistic child, or when the others don't, or the one who gets what it's like to have battled with people pleasing to such a degree that you kind of didn't really know who you were for a while, and other people won't get that. And yeah, it's just, again, it's just one of these brilliantly liberating, slow realizations that
I want to talk about that, actually. Sort of, I guess, the parent with a neurodiverse child and being neurodiverse, because obviously ADHD is neurodiverse, and we're both in that similar situation. I guess the one that I can't be fully present all the time relates into to much of this, because I know that for me, being present with Rupert all the time is very, very difficult, and a lot of the situations that we have are very, very triggering, because I can't sometimes cope with the stress of the situation, and I have to sort of like remove myself, yet I feel like I need to be present for him all the time, but that encroaches on my boundaries, and I get terrible mum guilt when I'm not there because he needs me. And actually only this morning I have dropped him off at school and I'm not seeing him until Saturday, and he was sort of okay with that, but we had to do a lot of routine things this morning to facilitate that to happen, and things had to go his way, which meant spaghetti and meatballs for breakfast. But that's fine. You do what you need to do. But I think that for me was a really liberating thing, because I have felt that having a child with special needs, I need to be present all the time. And I think for me that has been exhausting, burnout exhausting, anxiety exhausting. How have you achieved that, and has that been your experience?
Yeah, I think having grace for myself, and the fact that sometimes being present, it's just not attainable. And I think that's what I talk about in the book. It's just, our brains are designed to have an awareness of what's happened, so we can think about consequences, and we can think about like learning and experience that might glean from what has happened. We think about the future, because it's good to have hopes and dreams and goals, so that we're aware of what we're doing now impacts on the future. And also, we're here now, we're always present. I think we beat ourselves up for not being present, but I'm here and you're here. But it's often where our focus is, isn't it? You know, we might have a whole conversation with our kids, but we're not listening to a single word that they're saying, because we're thinking about work, or we're thinking about logistics for tomorrow. And I think, yeah, we can, there's this real shaming on social media, I find, of like, you've got this many summers left with your kids, you know, and so when you find yourself wanting to fast forward some of it because it's so flipping hard and intense and overstimulating, and you know, actually you're just having a really normal human response to something that is stressful, and your nervous system does not care, because it is so basic. It does not care whether what is stressful is a bear coming to chase after you right now, or your loved child who is having a meltdown. Your nervous system is like, get me out of here. I am not safe. I'm feeling threatened. I need to return to equilibrium. I need calm. I need space. I need to ground myself. And I think we can have so much self-blame and shame, and we can find ourselves questioning the love that we have for our kids and the gratitude that we have for where we find ourselves in life. Instead of actually just realizing that what's happening inside of us is a very physiological, normal response to stress. And when we recognize that's happening, so it was a real grief for me to actually recognize that my son triggers my stress response a lot of the time. Being around my son, who I love, is stressful for my body. So either I can, this is what I've historically done, shame myself. What kind of mother are you that you find it hard being around your own kid a fair amount of the time? What kind of mother are you that you find it hard to be patient when you're stressed and your nervous system is is going into that stress response. And I can either just keep doing that, which keeps me stuck and my needs unmet, or I can think, okay, there's a lot going on when your son's tired. It's stressful for you, because of course it is. So what might you be able to do today to get some rest, to have a little bit of slowness? What need is unmet that that you can meet in a way that gives you a bit more resource and resilience? And so I think instead of just shaming myself for not always being present, enjoying the moment, recognizing that that stress response tells me that I need something somewhere, and how can I tend to that need, or validate that feeling, or feel heard, because in those moments I don't, and it's not his responsibility to hear me. So where can I get that need met? You know, that just, it just puts a whole different slant on the whole thing, and it changes it.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I got cross with Rupert this morning about something again, and I'm still thinking about it now, and that's going to annoy me and play on me. I know it will dissipate at some point. And I guess as your kids change age, the wonderful thing is actually, you know, this book will be, you know, I will get my big kids to read, because actually, you know, I think that they need to know these things. And actually I had a fallout with my son. And I guess I sort of said to him, look, I have not been a parent before. So this is totally new territory to me as well. So I guess the mistakes that I make, you kind of pay the price for. And the mistakes that you're making, or the things that you do that I don't think sit comfortably and I lose my rag, you know, is a way of me trying to guide you, to give you the tools that you need to go out, you know, into the big wide world with a sense of, I guess, you know, all the things that we want them to have. And actually, I think that a lot of these uncomfortable truths, the sooner we learn them, right, the better. Especially with that competitiveness, with social media that our kids are sadly all, you know, hooked on. I mean, Rupert, he's 8. He's not going near phones, technology. You know, I'm not saying that my big two have got issues. They are adults. They can do what they want, but, or you know, nearly. But I really want to protect Rupert from that, because I do feel, especially with you know, all the things that he has to cope with, that brings in that certain element of questioning all of these things, and being present as well. You know, when you're kind of talking about that, like you said, we're just there on our phones and we're not really fully engaging with that issue. Just again picking up on something you said there about the wishing away as well, you know, like at the end of the summer holidays and having that guilt. It's funny because I've got the two different age ranges, I often say when I'm like that with Rupert, and people are, don't wish it away, they'll be off to university before you know it. And it's like, I do know it, because I'm experiencing that end of the scale. And then it makes you feel even more guilty, because people have then given that assumption that they always had it perfect.
Yeah, the rose-tinted glasses, eh? I just think, again, just having compassion for yourself and recognising that there are so many complex emotions that can exist in the same space. You can feel grateful, you can have really enjoyed some of those moments, and also it kind of felt really hard and you can crave the return of routine. It might be that you really enjoy elements of having your kids at home, but also you're really excited to be able to push it into parts of who you are that you haven't been able to kind of engage in for a number of years as you've kind of walked these earlier years of parenting. And those things can all exist. It's like there's this expectation that we must just feel either always grateful, or just that if we feel overwhelmed, that somehow that totally overshadows the love. And it's just so unhelpful and it's so unhealthy, and we internalize this and we shame ourselves for having really normal human emotion responses to what's going on around us. And it's like emotions are king. You know, we put so much onus on them, we give them so much power, that if I feel overwhelmed, how dare I feel overwhelmed, because this is my privilege and so many people would kill to be in that situation, and these are the kids that I yearn for, long for, so how dare I feel overwhelmed. And the fact of the matter is it's just a feeling. I just feel overwhelmed as a response to this moment, and it's going to pass, and I don't need to overanalyze it or shame myself for it. And yeah, it just kind of puts emotions are important, but they're a response.
Yeah.
We can acknowledge them and validate them and respond to them, but they're not our whole personality. They're not our value system.
Yeah, it's hard though, because I do feel that we need to hear more of this, and definitely as midlife women as well, we need to hear this, because I think actually there's a time when you no longer have the kids at home and you have that empty nest syndrome, where these intrusive thoughts do really crop up. So I think it isn't just about that, that parenting and having those thoughts. It is when you have got time to sit back and stop and you process things, that you have time to sit and think about the uncomfortable truths that you talk about. So I'm going to ask you one question. I know we've touched on it. You're not quite there yet. And you said you're feeling prepared for perimenopause.
In a way that a non-parent is feeling prepared for parenthood.
Exactly that. But you do some really good key things that I talk about anyway, so I'm just going to touch on those. You exercise. You have cut out alcohol.
Yes, I have.
Where
actually.
Are you with that journey now?
On the 18th of September, which is 2 days ago, in my very black and white way, because I tried moderating, and for me it was, I did 4 months without it, then I was like, I'm going to drink once every 2 weeks, and I was like, I'm going to drink once a week, and then I was like, I'm going to just drink 2 drinks once, and it was all, I wasn't drinking much anymore, but it was the mental gymnastics around, right, which night's it going to be? Is it going to be Friday night, Saturday night? Do I want to screw up my sleep on Friday night, or would I rather it be Sunday night? It's just like, we're looking at going on a holiday, and it's an all-inclusive hotel this holiday we might go on. And my first thought is, but I don't want to drink every night. What? Will I just drink one night? Which night? And I was like, this is my first thought. I am done with it. Let's just draw a line under it. It is not serving me. So yeah, I've just had to be black and white about it. So that's me done with alcohol. And I see it impact my hormones. I know that my hormones are happier without it. Yeah. My sleep is better without it. Sleep for me and regulating my emotions are so intertwined. So it's a gift to my kids, my husband and myself, that I stop faffing around with with those choices now.
And it is preparing, I would say that is definitely preparing you for hopefully a smoother transition into perimenopause.
Yeah, my periods now, Kate, are like 23 days cycle, is really, I've noticed over the last couple of years really that things are slowly changing and shifting. So, but yeah, it's unknown, but it's not, because you and others are so generously kind of paving the way for us. And we're not going to get gaslit by doctors in the same way. We're not going to kind of devalue our own experiences and brush them off in the same way than the generations before us might have done, or kind of feel ashamed and with the taboo of some of these topics, because you are so generously vulnerable. So I feel incredibly grateful for those of you who are a few steps ahead of me.
And we'll keep talking about it. And actually, on one of my podcasts, I think it was last week's one, I pretty much diagnosed my guest as being perimenopause, which is like, shit, I'm going to have to go to the doctor, aren't I? I was like, yeah, I think you should. Because I think that is the other thing, is that women, and again, this would be interesting, and then I'm really conscious of time, they suffer. Like what is this thing where we just keep suffering? We put ourselves to the bottom of the pile. And we don't do anything about it often until it has really encroached on our lives, until we are unable to function. And it's like there are so many things that we can do before we get to that place. But we're so selfless sometimes. Yeah.
We feel like we're an inconvenience to ourselves. And it's like, if we're really honest about it, how has that served us in life? Where is our confidence? Where is our self-esteem? Where are our boundaries? How are our relationships? How is our network around us? How many people do we have that we feel like we can turn to? And if we're constantly feeling like our own needs and bodily functions are, an inconvenience to ourselves, then I'd put money on it that the answers to some of those questions are not going to be great.
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't we see this time of our lives as a bit of a reality check and a turning point where it might be halfway through, but what about if the second half can be made even richer by healthier boundaries and leaning into rest and embracing some of the joys in your life that you've been working so hard to kind of put there and maintain. Yeah, I think that's a great invitation.
I love that. Thank you. I think that's a really lovely spot, a lovely place to wrap up on. Thank you for your time. Thank you always for sharing your own journey, your vulnerabilities, writing these books. We're probably not, well, I don't know, I say this, we're probably not expecting one for a while. You've probably already written book number 6.
I say nothing. I can say nothing.
I'm saying nothing. I love it, honestly. But it's that brain, that powerful brain that you have, and we're all grateful for it. So, Anna, thank you so much for your time
Thanks
this morning. If people
do.
don't follow you, which I'm sure they do, where can they find you? Where can they get your help? Where can they get your books? Where do we get to Anna?
All of that jazz. Just, Instagram, Anna Mathur, and everything is like the tree trunk and everything springs from there. So head there and you'll find me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.